You know, one of the things that strikes me is that when human beings want to express something important, they do it in sound. When I proposed to my wife, for example, I didn't send her a text, you may be pleased to know that. I whispered in her ear, and if you see somebody walking out into the street, into the middle of traffic, you don't simply wave your arms, you shout. So if it counts, if it carries emotion, if it carries urgency, we use sound as a mechanism of transmission. That means that sounds are imbued with both emotion and meaning, and therefore memory. And when those sounds change, then the memories that the sounds carry with them also change. I think a lot about the way sounds become extinct. Sounds that were once a part of the world that no longer exist. My grandmother, for example, typed on a manual typewriter. Even from the street outside of her house, I could hear her hitting those keys. My mother, on the other hand, used an electric typewriter, and it was much smoother and much softer. Those sounds are now really inextricably bound in my memory with those people. Now, both of those people are gone, and both of those sounds are gone also. So there is such a thing in the world of sounds as extinction and evolution, just as there is in the world of biology. And so we have sounds which we simply have lost. The sound of the rotary telephone is gone. In many respects, the sound of a stylus on vinyl is gone, or at least substantially changed in terms of its social usage. Many sounds are gone, and new sounds have taken their place. So I wonder, is it possible that in 50 years, someone could sit in this chair and be nostalgic and even misty-eyed sometimes about the sound of the Macintosh cord, in the same way that I am nostalgic and misty-eyed about the sound of my grandmother's typewriter? I don't know, but as sounds carry meaning, carry emotion, and carry memory, I imagine so. So I'm a percussionist. I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not an historian. I have read a reasonable amount about the history of sound, but I'm not a specialist here. But I can imagine that 500 years ago, probably even 50 years ago, the sound world was really, really different. And what I imagine the case is that there were always sounds of machines. As soon as human beings came on and started clanking rocks together, that's a kind of machine. But the sounds of those machines were really quite different from one another, and they occupied a relatively small space in the sonosphere. So as history has progressed and as machines have become a bigger part of our lives, including industrial machines and cars and airplanes, and eventually leading us to the late 20th and early 21st century, my sense, as someone who listens carefully to the outside world, is that sounds have become more and more like each other and louder at the same time. So in essence, it's a kind of sonic version of our lack or loss of biodiversity. The species of sounds are less differentiated than they have ever been. Sounds, the noises of life sound much more like each other, and the overall level of noise has gotten higher. And now, with the ability to, in the device of a smartphone or an iPad or a tablet of some sort, of taking your means of communication and your means of contact with the world with you wherever you go, the ubiquitous sounds of phones ringing or fingernails on a smartphone, it's a sound that no longer differentiates one person from another. Is there such a thing anymore as a signature sound? And I think that's vanished. But I think it was a part of our lives at some point. I mean, I remember my father, and I can still, even though he's been gone for a number of years, I remember his gait. I remember what it sounded like, the way he shut the door. And so an individuality of sound has always been a big part of how we identify things. And now, with increasing homogeneity of the sound world, I think we also lose those sonic identifiers.